Trent Condon alongside LeShun Daniels back with you on another edition of Locked On Hawkeyes. We talk about what we're looking for in a new offensive coordinator for the Hawkeye football. Players coming back, NIL, how different it is, and that money maybe making guys stick around a little bit longer. And a big time for the young players. It's bowl prep time. We break it all down today. Locked On Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon. He's LeShun Daniels, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts, and you can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. LeShun, good to see you again here today, as it is a very quiet time in Iowa football. Bowl prep has begun as they get ready for the matchup against Tennessee in the Citrus Bowl. You have that happening, but overall, as we wait for a new offensive coordinator, it is just that, a whole lot of waiting. Kirk Ferentz has been talking to candidates. Have they been official interviews? We don't know that. I got excited last night. It's flight tracker season. You remember this with the coaching searches, and I saw there was a plane that departed from from Iowa City to Cedar Rapids to Salt Lake City. I said, here we go. Andy Ludwig, the guy I've been wanting for the last 5 years. He's the new. That of course has not come to fruition at that point in time, but it's a little goofy. You get on social media, you get on the message boards, you see those kind of things, but we just kind of sit here and wait. And as we know, Coach Ferentz certainly has his own timeline of doing things.
Yeah. I feel like, trying to track the planes and whatnot is just for really fun at this point, because I feel like when it comes to a candidate, it's going to be someone, I think it's going to be someone that Coach Ferentz is definitely familiar with. And there are definitely some good candidates out there that I think that would fit that bill. But yeah, it's real quiet. I feel like they're not really letting anything leak through, and I feel like it's kind of unfortunate, because you want to try to get that move done sooner rather than later, because I think that would help you, especially help you with recruiting, whether it's in the transfer portal or through incoming high schoolers. And I think having kind of that person in place, I think would be a great deal to help the future talent of this roster. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. It's really, really quiet right now, but in my opinion, I think it's going to end up being someone that Coach Ferentz is familiar with, and that is familiar enough with the Iowa scheme, because again, at the end of the day, it's still Coach Ferentz's offense. It's his team. So I feel like it's going to be someone that has some familiarity with it, but someone that can also help take the offense into the year 2024. So
Joe Philbin is a name that is starting to get a little bit more, I guess, pull out there. A lot of conversation. Former offensive line coach with the Hawkeyes in the early tenure of Kirk Ferentz, has been in the NFL basically since then. This past year, he was an analyst for Ohio State. But that's a name that makes a whole lot of sense. A guy that maybe can help the offensive line take a step forward going forward. A guy that has called plays, though not a ton of them. Even when he was the OC with the Packers, it was still Mike McCarthy that was calling plays there. So as a play caller, doesn't have as much experience as somebody that you'd anticipate. And we talked about Paul Chryst, but yeah, I mentioned Andy Ludwig. That's the apple of my eye, or going out there and getting Ryan Grubb from Washington. But guys without connections, it's going to be tough. There was a little bit of chatter a couple of nights ago about Scott Frost, and Scott Frost. I mean, look, Scott Frost has been good as a play caller, but his scheme, what he wants to do, even though they were based on running the football, it just doesn't seem like a great marriage. And personality also matters. I mean, when you look at Coach Ferentz and you think back to the coaches that you worked with and guys that he worked with, it's more than just knowing X's and O's. I mean, Kirk Ferentz, he was going to be a teacher before we went down the path of a football. There's more than just X's and O's. It looks like with the coaching staff when Kirk's putting that staff together.
Yeah, I would say so. I would definitely agree with that. Um, for starters, all the coaches that I dealt with during my time at Iowa, and then even the coaches that I've had the chance to interact after my time at Iowa, like have been been phenomenal people, much better than I think than maybe their ability as a coach. And then I do think that they do an excellent job of just teaching you the game of football, and not just like, hey, this is our scheme, this is why we do the scheme, but more of just like uh surround to really bring your young football players up to the knowledge that you want them to have when it comes to being a good football player, because again, it's more than just knowing your scheme. It's, hey, what's the other team trying to do to you? What things are they trying to take away? Why are we running exactly why we're running? And so on and so forth. And I think that the coaches have done an excellent job doing that, and I felt like I learned so much. Like my football knowledge, obviously going from high school to college was gonna improve, but I really felt like my time at Iowa, my football knowledge just grew exponentially, and it wasn't just on the offensive side of the football, or even maybe just as a running back. Like it helped me understand our offense as a whole, and then understand different defenses, why these different defenses attack us the way that they do, and then as well as the importance of special teams, and why special teams is important, and why each phase has to have a marriage together to play proper complementary football. And those are the type of, I feel like, traits that Coach Ferentz is definitely going to be looking for. Someone who is going to be an excellent teacher, who isn't just going to uh, work on your most talented guys and your best guys, but it's going to help develop your younger guys, your more inexperienced guys, and get them up to speed. So when they have the opportunity to go in and play, that they'll be ready. There's not going to be a drop off, and I feel like that's something that Coach Ferentz and the staff have done really since during Coach Ferentz's entire tenure there. They've done an excellent job of developing players and bringing players along, and really breeding smart football players. And those are the type of things that Coach Ferentz is definitely going to be looking in for any coach to join his staff, let alone a new offensive coordinator. So those would be the traits that I would be expecting. And when you mentioned Philbin, obviously he had done an excellent job with offensive line during his time at Iowa, and knowing where Iowa is at with the offensive line right now. I feel like that could be something that could really help bring Iowa back to the more traditional offensive line play that we've seen in the past. And I know that this has been a topic of discussion for the past couple of years now. And even though, hey, Brian had done a really good job with the offensive line, even bringing someone back in who has that familiarity with the offensive line and has familiarity with play calling, and being in at different areas, I think is something that can really help uh, bring that offensive line play forward, and to what we're traditionally used to seeing.
So, whoever the new coordinator is, LeShun, what are you looking for? I mean, schematically, what needs to change when you look at this Iowa offense? We talked a ton about the run game this year and moving so far away from the outside zone, but I think more than anything, I'm talking about the passing combination, the route trees. What are you looking for? What do you think could work schematically for Iowa football, even with the basic tenets remaining the same?
Yeah, and I feel like it's not easy. It's not an easy change, to because again, teams in the NFL struggle with this. But I mean, it's like over time, Iowa has just done, hey, traditional run the football. We're going to run zone. We're going to do quick passing game, and then we're going to take our shots when we have the chance. But something that I feel like teams are implementing a lot more, both in college and in the NFL, is really that kind of intermediate range of the passing game, and that's really between the linebackers and between the deep safeties, and really taking advantage of that area, because when you're able to do that, it prevents your safeties from being able to creep up. It forces your linebackers to play a little bit more depth. They can't play as close to the line of scrimmage and be on top of the run game. And taking advantage of that area is something that I would love to see us do a lot more. Because again, I feel like every time we try to go complete a pass. Very rarely do we attack that, I feel like 5 to 15 yard range. Everything feels like it's 5 yards and under, or we're throwing a deep shot.
Mhm.
So taking advantage of that intermediate area, I think would be something that I would love to see more of. And another thing is, again, talked about it last week on the pod, was about implementing a lot more shifts and motions to help gain an advantage, both number wise in the run game. And it's also something that you can gain advantage in the passing game as well. You can help get maybe your more athletic guys or your speedier guys, put them in a position where, hey, we get them on a motion to help outflank the defense, or we get them on a motion to help them build speed so they can uh, act as a decoy and open up some different areas throughout the field. And those were a lot of areas that you see teams that even teams that run a traditional pro style offense, that those are things that they do on a consistent basis to help them gain an advantage in the run game and gain an advantage in the passing game. So they're not running into stack boxes all the time, or they're not, when they are passing the football, right? Like guys aren't sitting on their routes, maybe
Mhm.
at the sticks, or sitting on those short routes, or sitting on the check down. So those are things that I would love to see from a scheme perspective. And with those things, it's not like that takes you away from the traditional Iowa offense that you would be used to seeing. It would just add a little bit more wrinkles. It would feel like it's more in the 21st century. Like when I think, as if I was Coach Ferentz, like, yeah, I don't want to go completely away from what we've done. I don't want us to just simply go to an air raid offense. That's not obviously not what we're looking for.
Right.
But when it comes to being a pro style offense in the year 2024, those are things that good offenses do, and there's no reason why the Iowa offense isn't able to do it, because again, we've got smart football players all over the field. I think they would be able to handle um, you know, some additional route concepts. They would be able to handle different formations and different shifts and pre-snap um, things on top of what they're already doing. Because again, we have smart football players, and these things are only going to help bring a more of an advantage to the offense, in my opinion, when it comes to what I want to see and not necessarily the next offensive coordinator, but just what I want to see from a scheme perspective from
Mhm.
the Hawks next season. So.
Makes a whole lot of sense, and I think a lot of good points there, LeShun. We continue here. NIL has created a little bit of a change in the way that we talk about guys coming back for another season. LeShun, I'm going to ask you, if this was an option back when you finished up your career, had another year of eligibility, would things have been a little bit different with a little extra money maybe sitting around? We'll talk about that at a very important time. Bowl prep for the young players. We'll get into that as we continue. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. Is just you against the numbers. You don't have to worry about battling thousands of other players out there. You got people with their algorithms and their spreadsheets and going deep into it. It's just you picking more or less than a 2 to 6 player stat projection, and you can watch the winnings roll in. Taking a look at the NFL coming up this week. Got 3 quarterbacks here. Mitchell Trubisky, that's right. Mitch, I'm going to go less than 200.5 passing yards. Patrick Mahomes, after a disappointing one on Sunday. Let's go more than 247.5 for him. And Stafford against that crappy Washington defense. Let's go more than 265 yards passing in the game. You hit 3 out of 3 with the power play. That means 5 times the amount that you put up. Or you can do the flex play. If you hit all 3, 2.25 times the amount you put in there. Or if you just hit 2 or 3, you still get better than your money back, 1.25. That's the way that it works with Prize Picks, and that's what I got set up coming up this week. Prize Picks, super easy to play, as you can see. Make picks and submit entries in less than 60 seconds. And quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types are what makes Prize Picks the number one daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code lockedoncollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege with the code lockedoncollege for the first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Trent LeShun back with you once again here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. LeShun, let's go back. You're wrapping up your career. You're getting ready to go on. You got opportunities at the next level, but you knew it was going to be a difficult path. I mean, let's start right there. What were you hearing from agents, people inside the NFL, Coach Ferentz's connections in there about the opportunity for you to be drafted, going the free agent route, kind of before in the the pre-draft process, what that was like for you?
Yeah, it was definitely, it was going to be late day three, priority free agent like type deal for me. Like that's what I knew finishing up the season. That's basically what I heard from uh basically every agent that I ended up meeting with as we got out of the season, as we, went into the bowl season and things of that nature. And I'm, starting to interview those guys. So that's kind of what the feedback that I was getting. And then as we went more into the process, again, it was more of the kind of similar deal when I was taking my visits to I think to two pre-draft visits to the Packers and the Giants, and kind of like that was kind of the vibe I got from the scouts that I was interacting with when I went there. Like it was definitely one of those situations like, yeah, we really like you. We think that you definitely do have an opportunity to play at the next level. It was just like, hey, how you never know like how the draft and all that stuff is going to shake itself out. So I definitely knew though that there was plenty of interest there. And then I mean, again, I had my pre-draft workouts and then all that jazz. So like, but I knew like going in, I knew it definitely wasn't going to happen in the first 2 days. So I
Yeah.
basically just watched it for my other teammates and other people around college football that I happened to know or I was good friends with. So yeah, I was definitely knew I was going to be that day three, priority free agent type deal for myself.
Now, fast forward to today. Say, well, we of course have the COVID year in there. We have extra year of eligibility. Say you had another year of eligibility, and all of a sudden the Swarm Collective comes up to you and says, LeShun, look, we're not going to be able to give you $1 million or anything like that, but we can maybe get you to six figures to come back for another year. The NFL will still obviously be there afterwards. You can still give an opportunity, but come back for one more season. I know everybody's different. All the types are different. We talk about a guy like Logan Lee, like he's been married for a couple of years. He's ready to get on with his life. And there's plenty of people that are like that. But the other side of things, if that was an option back when you were playing, is that something that, and knowing that even for a priority free agent, those signing bonuses are not exactly huge and it's difficult to make a team. Is that something you would have at least entertained the thought of that if it is something, in that six-figure range to come back for another season of football at Iowa?
Yeah, it was definitely would have been something I would have heavily considered, to be honest. I mean, like you look at myself and you think like, and you really look at like my first two seasons at Iowa. I mean, I played sparingly. It was probably like I don't even think I didn't even have over 80 carries probably. Like if you
Mhm.
counted it all up between like my first two seasons. So for starters, like I had like no tread on my tires whatsoever. So like I was still a spring chicken. Like my body was feeling relatively fresh from these just from the physical pounding. So an extra year I think would have been something that I would have considered for sure. And I think there was some areas of my game that I would have loved to go ahead and put a lot more on tape. And I think that would have definitely been more. I would have loved to put more on tape in the passing game. And that was the one area when it came, like one of the biggest areas when it came to critique on myself heading into there was like, hey, like you're basically just used as a first and second down back, especially like the way that football is going nowadays. Like you got to be able to do all phases. And although I had that ability to do it, it just again it wasn't on tape. So if it's not on tape,
Yeah.
your tape's your resume. Like no one's actually going to know what you're actually able to do. So if I had the opportunity, to come back for an extra year, I think it would have been something I would have definitely entertained extremely heavily, just to really kind of build on the resume that I had started building for myself as I really started to take off. had some great games as a junior, but really started to take off in my last year of football. And I think having another year would have been something that I would have heavily considered. But like again, that's different for me. That's not like like there's a bunch of people that have their COVID year that were playing pretty consistent snaps from the time that they
Mhm.
were a freshman all the way through now. Where hey, you got all those snaps on your body. You want to take advantage of the NFL opportunity. So no amount of money from the NIL is really going to help, especially like if you're going to be in the first 2 days. Like if you're going to be in the first 2 days drafted, like honestly, I don't think there's an amount that the NIL could bring to you that would be more worth it than being drafted in the first 2 days. But for a situation like myself, it's definitely something that I would have considered very heavily.
And we have all these guys right now that are kind of making that decision, from Jay Higgins to Sebastian Castro. I think those are the two headliners that have that opportunity, have that ability to come back for another season. Nick Jackson is apparently looking at a potential waiver after his last year at Virginia. Obviously, what happened and the devastating shooting that happened there. And there was some talk that potentially those Virginia players were going to get another year of eligibility as their season was cut short. So, I mean, those are the big names out there. The problem, though, is, and I don't think it's a problem, but right now there's just a numbers crunch. 85 players, and you have to have 85 scholarships by the time we get to August. They're over right now with signing day next week and the potential of even more of these guys coming back. That's leading to Iowa not being as active, certainly, as they were a year ago. LeShun, when we come back, I want to ask you about this. There were guys that, part of your recruiting class, buddies of yours, that departed. We know that Iowa doesn't run guys off, but I'm sure you, excuse me, heard how those conversations been. I want to go behind the curtain a little bit here, and guys that are told, we would love you to stick around, but guess what? You're probably not going to be playing in an Iowa Hawkeye uniform. We're going to talk about that delicate conversation as we continue. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers, you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Simple as that. No worry about the point spread, nothing like that. It's just a money line bet. It can be a huge favorite, and if you win with that $5 bet, that's $150 in bonus bets coming your way. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app, it's super easy to use, user-friendly. I've used it for years and absolutely love the interface, how easy it is to find a wide range of betting options. Of course, they got the point spreads, the over-unders, player props, as deep of a menu as you're going to find out there, same game parlays, and a whole lot more. So visit fanduel.com/lockedon to continue what has been a great NFL season. We got college hoops going on, bowl season right around the corner. Again, that's fanduel.com/lockedon for this offer. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Trent LeShun back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. So I mentioned it, LeShun. You had guys, part of your recruiting class, I'm sure friends, that departed Iowa. And not departed because they were off to the NFL. It was guys that probably weren't going to play. And we're not going to talk about individual players or get into their story, but Coach Ferentz does not strike me as a guy that's running people off. And we don't see the certainly turnover that you do in most every other major conference and program out there. Iowa's turnover rate is not at the same level that it is certainly at some other places, but it does happen. So what is that like? I mean, obviously it didn't happen to you, but I'm sure you heard the stories. You go in, what is it, the post regular season meeting, and coach tells you, hey, you're still on scholarship, but you're not playing here. I mean, what do you think that those conversations were like?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like that's probably a pretty accurate statement because yeah, I mean, at the end of the season, you get a real good gauge of like, okay, like this is where you're at, and it's not really after your first year. It's more so after your second year, especially like if you had been redshirted the year prior, and you're coming in like that postseason meeting and you're meeting with your position coaches and they're giving you feedback, and then you meet with Coach Ferentz, and Coach Ferentz kind of tells you like this is where you're at, and really like these are the guys who are you really competing with, and these are the guys that are ahead of you, and um, realistically, you're probably not going to play. Like they definitely will keep it blunt with you, or tell you like, hey, I really think you have a great opportunity to be a good player for us, or maybe the other way around. And those are really how those conversations go. And there's been plenty of players that have persevered through that and stuck around and did end up, maybe seeing the field even a little bit. But there have been other players where they're like, hey, I don't even want to deal with it anymore. Like I'm just
Mhm.
gonna go ahead and I'm gonna see if I can have different opportunities elsewhere. And I think like now, like with the transfer portal, like those opportunities are even more enticing for the players that you almost feel like are being pushed out, because again, you get that free transfer to another school. You don't have to necessarily you don't have to drop down to the FCS or Division 2 level. You can still be in the FBS now. So back then it was definitely a lot more difficult, and probably why you didn't see as many transfers, just outright transfers happen, just because hey, it was going to be a lot more difficult of a process there. Whereas now, it's not as difficult, and I think Coach Ferentz is definitely would be easier to have those conversations, because again, hey, like you still have that free transfer to go wherever. But yeah, these conversations had it. I mean, if you look through the classes over the past, especially like back when I was playing, before like the transfer portal rule, and before you had the 4 games for the red shirt, like it was rare for an Iowa player to transfer, and if they transferred, they were probably transferring because of hey, they got in some trouble, or they just looked at their opportunity and just felt like they weren't going to have the other opportunity to be the player that they really envisioned themselves being at Iowa. So yeah, I'm not going to obviously say any names, but you can go ahead and you guys can look for yourself and come up with your own conclusions. So.
I got you there. I'm reading you loud and clear and what you're saying about some of those guys. Well, LeShun, final thing for you. We talked about a bull prep and what this is for the veterans, these young guys, and we're kind of talking about it right now and the transfer rules that are in place. But these 15 practices for the young guys as they get ready, they're going to get a whole lot more reps. You think about a guy like Marco Lionez, who didn't get to see the field this year as a true freshman as a quarterback, though a lot of people would have liked to see him throughout the course of the season, but not just quarterback, any position. What what this time is like, and how much can you accelerate? How many opportunities do you have to really open up the eyes of the coaches and saying, all right, hey, for 2024, this guy's got to be a part of our plans.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, the this is a great opportunity. Great opportunity because for several reasons. Because for starters, like your starters and your basically like your ones, like they're gonna get their reps, but a lot of the focus isn't gonna be on those guys. Like it's gonna be on, maybe the second string guys on the 2 deep, or your third, fourth string guys, guys that are on the scout team. Like this is your opportunity to put yourself in front of the coaches without an incoming class that have came in, right? Where you want to see, your new freshmen or your new transfer portal guys. Like this is an opportunity for you to be able to show off before those guys get there, to put it in the coach's mind, like, hey, I'm a player, like I'm a guy that can compete at this level and I can play at a high level. And with those 15 practices, like it's an opportunity for you to accelerate your own game and work on maybe some things that, or show some things that maybe you didn't show during fall camp or the past spring ball. And that's the one thing I think Coach Ferentz wants to see from his guys over the course of the season and over the course of the career. They want to see you going on an upward trajectory. And if you're not doing that, and if you're stagnant or you're plateauing for whatever reason, and you're not improving upon that, like that puts you lower on the totem pole. I mean, just to be realistic, like what continually knocks you down. And I think it's something that uh we've seen from some guys maybe that have uh been here for a couple of years, and then start and then entered their name in the transfer portal, just because again they weren't continuing to grow, they weren't continuing to improve, and they were starting to plateau. And once that happens, like now everybody knows, like, hey, this is the player you are. Like, there's not really
Mhm.
much more else. Like at this point in time, we can't really see your growth. At least there at Iowa. There's been guys that have transferred later in their career and then went to different schools and then show that they can be a player, that they can play at the Power Five level, as a really good player. But a lot of times, it just wasn't going to happen at Iowa. So this is an opportunity for you to show your growth, and you really can put yourself in a position going into spring ball, like, hey, I deserve more reps. I can compete with the ones. I can compete with the best of them, and to put you in a position for the next fall to be like actually be out there on Saturday. So that's what the situation is like, and these players have an excellent opportunity, and they need to take advantage of it if they are getting reps. So
That's really good stuff, LeShun. Well, we'll talk about obviously a whole lot more coming up next week, and we'll get deeper into things. We'll also do our bowl extravaganza. We'll talk about some of the games. I don't know about you, but I'm not real excited about you and me breaking down the famous Toastery Bowl between Western Kentucky and Old Dominion coming up on Monday. So we're going to stay away from the games coming up this weekend, but next week we'll talk a little bit more about that. Hey, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. In fact, you can see LeShun and myself over there on the Locked On channel. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Picks next week, LeShun. Maybe we'll have news on the offensive coordinator front. It's also signing day next week, and excited to talk to you a little bit about that. LeShun, we'll talk to you again next week. Have a great one.
yep, thank you. You too. Go Hawks.